1 hour south of Madison, not far from the Illinois border, is the remote wildlife area known as the Avon Bottoms, a swampy forest along the Sugar River that spans nearly 3,000 acres. The winding river and the peaceful forest that surrounds it is a nature lover's paradise by day, but by night, the woods are said to transform into a setting straight out of a horror movie. The Avon Bottoms has long been the backdrop for stories about a haunted playground, murder, and sightings of the elusive Dogman creature, which was even featured on an episode of the TV show MonsterQuest in 2008. One of the scary ghost stories involving the forest centers around an eerie and secluded hunting area off Nelson Road, known by locals as Hell's Playground. The creepy, overgrown road leading to this area is closed for public travel, but still accessible from a walking path that looks like a scene from the Blair Witch Project. According to a creepy legend featured in the paranormal book Weird Wisconsin, Hell's Playground is a haunted patch of woods that is said to contain the remnants of an old playground where one adult male and 2 children were supposedly murdered a long time ago. Details about this alleged crime are unknown, but some have said the man was the father of the 2 children and either ended their lives before ending his own, or all 3 of them died at the hands of someone else who was never caught. Those who have explored these dark woods at night in the past and actually found the mysterious playground have allegedly reported seeing the swings move back and forth on their own when no wind is present. Others who wander these woods after dark have also claimed to hear the bone-chilling sound of chanting and children's laughter coming from the forest where the evil playground is believed to have once stood. Many people who visit the woods will tell you that the area just feels off, even during the day, and some refuse to visit the woods at night, including hunters. The story about a triple murder taking place in the woods of Hell's Playground has never been proven through historical records, but some say the woods are haunted by a boy named Stephen Shriver who died here in 1974. On December 3rd of 1974, 14-year-old Stephen Shriver was fatally shot by a 29-year-old man named Brian Carey, but the truth is that the shooting actually took place on a nearby road and not in the woods as many have claimed. On the night of the deadly shooting, a car full of high school kids, including Stephen Shriver, began harassing Brian Carey after the farmer's chickens blocked the road, preventing the vehicle from passing through. After the chickens crossed the road, the driver drove off and then made a U-turn, heading back in the direction of Carey's farm minutes later. As the kids in the vehicle harassed Carey while passing the farm again, Carey grabbed a loaded shotgun and opened fire, mortally wounding Shriver, who died in the backseat of the car moments later. In the early 1970s, local farmers were relentlessly attacked by vicious high school kids, and a newspaper article from 1975 even documented these events. In the article, farmers tell scary stories about kids throwing rocks through their windows, shooting guns from moving cars, and even burning down vacant farm buildings. During his trial, Brian Carey argued self-defense and that he acted out of fear for his safety due to the endless harassment, but in the end, he was found guilty of murder and sent to prison for the shooting. Even though the tragic murder took place in a car down the road and not in the woods of Hell's Playground, some believe the forest is haunted by the spirit of Stephen Shriver or the 3 people who supposedly died here. I did quite a bit of research on this location and found no proof of a triple murder occurring in these woods or anywhere in the Avon Bottoms, and the story is probably just an urban legend. Many locals know about the legend and doubt the story, mostly for the fact that it's an odd location for a playground, but some believe it could have been placed here a long time ago and later dismantled. I explored the forest during the day in search of an old rusty swing set or any evidence of the alleged playground, but I wasn't able to find anything after walking in the woods for quite a ways. The forest is very rugged and difficult to hike due to fallen trees and thorn bushes all over the place, but it is possible the remains of an old playground are somewhere in these woods. In my opinion, though, it does seem strange and impractical that a playground would be placed in the middle of the woods unless it was once located off the gravel road that is now closed for public travel. But regardless of the legend, many people believe Hell's Playground is haunted and that whatever lurks in the forest might be something much darker than the ghosts of kids who died in a playground. The story about a haunted playground from hell isn't the only bizarre legend associated with the Avon Bottoms of Rock County. One of the most frightening stories to come out of this location are the eyewitness sightings of what many residents refer to as the Dogman, an elusive creature that's been seen all over southern Wisconsin for many years. The most well-documented case of the Dogman is the Beast of Bray Road story, which I made an entire video on, but the creature was also seen in Hell's Playground and near a bridge down the road. In 2008, the TV show MonsterQuest filmed part of an episode in the Avon Bottoms and featured the eyewitness story of a local woman who saw not one dogman but 3 of them at the same time. According to the story told on the MonsterQuest episode, a young woman named Katie Zahn allegedly saw 3 werewolf-like creatures drinking from the riverbank near the Nelson Road Bridge in broad daylight. Katie Zahn, along with the other witnesses who appeared on the episode titled American Werewolf, all took a lie detector test and passed it. Many find Katie Zahn to be truthful about her dogman sighting at the bridge on Nelson Road, and she isn't the only one who saw the beast in the woods of the Avon Bottoms. People visiting Hell's Playground at night have also reported hearing terrifying growling sounds coming from the woods and from under the bridge down the road where the beast was seen before. The growling is said to be abnormally deep and guttural, and like no other animal heard in the woods of Wisconsin. In one frightening story, a late-night hunter at Hell's Playground heard the growling sound and stumbled upon a partially eaten house cat that was impaled on a tree branch. The hunter then saw and heard the silhouette of a large creature quickly climbing down a tree in the distance and running off into the forest on 2 legs. Sightings of the Dogman and a similar creature in the woods of the swamp date all the way back to the 1970s, when a beast nicknamed the Avon Swamp Monster was seen multiple times near a former Christmas tree farm down the road. Many of these sightings were documented by the tree farm's owner, Paul Schilling, and several employees who worked as trimmers on the farm saw the hairy beast and described it as having a foul odor and a height of around 8 feet. According to a local newspaper article from 2012, a local resident was driving over the Nelson Road Bridge with friends when they all heard a loud and terrifying growl coming from underneath, but before they could stop and get a closer look, the creature took off running into the woods. No one truly knows what the Dogman is, but some believe it could be an undiscovered species of wolf or a creature from a prehistoric era. Some speculate the Dogman might not be a physical being at all, but instead a supernatural entity or even a demon. Stories about glowing eyes and its sudden disappearance lend credence to theories that it could be something demonic or otherworldly. Whether it's a flesh and blood creature or a supernatural entity, many people flock to the Avon Bottoms in hopes of encountering the beast. I went back to Hell's Playground later that night, and I'm not going to lie, when I walked up to this entrance, I almost turned around because this place is really scary at night, especially when you're alone. It was also freezing cold that night, but I really wanted to get the footage. So I walked probably about 2 miles into the woods on this secluded trail before I turned around. So this is the area where people have told stories about hearing disembodied voices of children, the sound of giggling and the sound of chanting as well, almost suggesting that maybe there was some type of a ritual taking place in these woods, which would not surprise me. The woods are also said to be haunted by the ghost of Stephen Schriever, the 14-year-old that was murdered down the road from here. But he was murdered in the road, not in the woods as a lot of people claim. Some people also connect the alleged haunting of these woods to another murder that I didn't mention earlier. Supposedly a woman was picked up in a bar by 2 men and murdered, and then dumped either off the bridge or in the woods next to the bridge, which is only a stone's throw away from this location. And that's actually the same bridge where the Dogman was allegedly seen and then featured on the MonsterQuest episode. There's also a story about a ghost appearing at the bridge, the ghost of a woman, and people connect that with the murder. But I'm not sure if that murder actually happened or not. I tried to find a newspaper article on that and I couldn't find anything. But I did find another article about a woman who was murdered and then her body was thrown into a ravine near here, not at this location, but only minutes away. So I'm not sure if that's what people are referencing or if there's a whole nother murder that took place here that I'm not aware of or I was unable to find. If you know about it, leave a comment below. This is also the location where a deer hunter was alone at night and he stumbled upon a half-eaten cat that was impaled on a tree branch, and then moments later saw the silhouette of a creature up in a tree climbing down really fast and then running off into the woods on 2 legs. And knowing the Dogman stories while I was walking down this trail was really scary because I was thinking at any moment I was going to hear a growl or my flashlight was going to light up some eyeballs, but luckily that never happened, although it would have been great to capture something like that on film. Before I went home, I decided to check out the bridge, which is in walking distance from the trail. And the bridge is where the Dogman was allegedly seen, as well as the ghost of a woman. I found that story out later. And that's also the same bridge where a local heard the sound of growling, a terrifying growl coming from underneath the bridge while he was driving over it at night with his friends. As I got closer to the bridge, I started to hear a rustling sound coming from the ditch on the left side of the road, and right away my heart was pounding. I started to freak out because I was thinking, what is it going to be? And then as I got closer, I shined my flashlight down there, and it was actually just a possum, and once he saw me, he took off running into the woods. I shined my flashlight across the bridge a few times, hoping to maybe capture something on film, but nothing happened, no weird sounds, no growls, no ghosts, nothing. It was the same thing at the other location in the woods along the trail. I went back and reviewed my footage. As far as I can tell, I didn't capture anything paranormal on film at all, but maybe you guys will see something that I missed. If you do, let me know. Leave a comment below. And let me know your thoughts on the Legends of Hell's Playground and the Dogman sightings. Have you ever experienced anything paranormal in the woods of the Avon Bottoms? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. The eerie ghost story of Avon Cemetery is an old legend that centers around the untimely death and unmarked burial of a young girl by the name of Nellie Brace. Nellie Brace's story is actually quite sad, and unfortunately, eyewitness accounts and details about the alleged ghost sightings in the cemetery are limited, but the story is an old legend that many locals are aware of. According to the girl's obituary from 1917 and burial records that can be found on the Find a Grave website, a young woman named Nellie Brace is buried in Avon Cemetery, but no one knows where because she was buried in an unmarked grave. Some speculate the girl was likely laid to rest alongside other members of the Brace family who are also buried in Avon Cemetery, but the exact location of the grave is unknown to the public. It is also very possible that the burial was isolated from others, as this was a very common practice at the time for people who died of highly contagious diseases, and sadly, Nellie was one of those unfortunate victims. On March 3rd of 1917, Nellie Brace passed away at her home after contracting scarlet fever and a bad cold that developed into a fatal case of pneumonia. Some say the girl actually died after contracting typhoid fever, but records note scarlet fever and pneumonia as the cause of death. Due to quarantine restrictions for deadly diseases in the early 1900s, no funeral service was held at the cemetery, and the only two people present for the young woman's burial was the undertaker and the family's doctor. Nellie Brace never received a proper burial with a tombstone or funeral rites, and this has led many to believe the girl's restless spirit haunts the cemetery, even appearing as a full-body apparition, according to the legend. It's unknown when the first ghost sighting occurred or if it still appears in the cemetery, but visitors have allegedly seen a pale female figure believed to be Nellie wandering the grounds. One of the most spine-chilling elements of Nellie's ghost story is the sound of sobbing heard by ghost hunters and others visiting the cemetery after dark, and legends claim the ghost has even communicated with visitors and identified itself as Nellie Brace. Paranormal investigators have visited Avon Cemetery, and one recorded a series of EVPs in 2009 that were made public in an old blog, and the recordings may or may not be communication with Nellie or someone else. I've listened to the EVPs, and while I found most of them to be questionable and barely audible, the recording of a tapping sound near the Brace family's plot was interesting. I walked around the cemetery at night with my flashlight to see if I could capture the ghost on film near the Brace family's plot or anywhere else on the grounds. I filmed the cemetery from different angles while panning the graves with my flashlight, but I didn't film anything unusual other than the skeleton of an animal inside a creepy maintenance shed. Skeptics argue that the ghost story of Nellie Brace is nothing more than a blend of folklore and the human tendency to connect strange occurrences to the supernatural. And some locals think the creepy story was simply made up by bored teenagers throwing late-night parties in the cemetery. But believers insist that the girl's ghost has been seen in this remote cemetery and the story shouldn't be dismissed entirely. Is it nothing more than a sad story about an innocent girl who died too young, or do you think the restless spirit of Nellie Brace really does haunt Avon Cemetery? And have you personally seen the full-body apparition of Nellie while visiting this cemetery? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Established in 1857, Forest Hill Cemetery is one of Madison's oldest burial sites and the final resting place of Civil War soldiers, prestigious politicians, and even Confederate prisoners of war. The cemetery is also home to several Native American effigy mounds that date back thousands of years, and some are even said to contain the remains of noble warriors and leaders of the Mound Builders Society. Forest Hill Cemetery stands as a testament to Madison's fascinating history, but according to its numerous haunted legends, it's also a place where the past refuses to rest in peace. Some consider the cemetery to be one of the most haunted places in Wisconsin, and many of the ghost stories revolve around the Civil War memorial plots for Union and Confederate soldiers. One of the cemetery's most famous haunted areas is Confederate Rest, where numerous reports of ghostly apparitions have emerged over the years. The memorial holds the remains of 140 soldiers who were captured in the spring of 1862 and imprisoned at Camp Randall in Madison, where one soldier was shot to death by a guard and the remaining 139 died from malnutrition and various diseases. Some of the men died while in transit to Camp Randall, hundreds of miles away, and the men who made it there alive all died within 2 months of imprisonment. Historically, Confederate Rest is unique because it is the northernmost Confederate memorial in the United States, and some believe the soldiers' far-from-home burials could be responsible for the paranormal activity that is said to occur here. Some also point to the city removing the Confederate memorial markers in 2017 and 2019, one of which was placed at the gravesite in 1906 and listed the names of the men buried in the plot. The plot was neglected in the years following the Civil War until a widow from Louisiana named Alice Waterman moved to Madison and maintained the graves until her death in 1897. She is also buried in the plot. Some paranormal researchers believe the memorial is haunted for the fact that the men buried here were prisoners of war and did not die peacefully, and also because the memorial is in close proximity to the graves of 240 Union soldiers. Over the years, several eerie and unsettling ghost stories have emerged from visitors and paranormal investigators, contributing to the cemetery's reputation as a hotspot for supernatural activity. Many visitors have reported seeing dark figures dressed in Civil War-era uniforms walking among the graves or standing at attention near the tombstones. Some witnesses claim that the figures appear as fleeting shadows, vanishing quickly when approached, while others report full-body apparitions that seem to interact with their surroundings. Paranormal activity is also said to occur at the Camp Randall Athletic Complex in Madison, where the Confederate prisoners of war were held captive until their death. In the 2008 paranormal book titled The Ghosts of Madison, Wisconsin, the author notes Forest Hill as the city's most haunted cemetery and that many visitors develop instant headaches near the military plots of the fallen soldiers. Several visitors have reported being touched by something unseen and hearing faint whispers and quiet voices while standing near the military graves. The voices seem to be coming from no particular direction and are often unintelligible, though some have described them as sounding like soldiers talking amongst themselves. This eerie phenomenon is particularly unsettling as the cemetery is usually quiet, especially at night. The ghostly activity at Forest Hill Cemetery is also said to have a connection with the 300-plus unmarked graves on the grounds, including those of paupers, infants, and people who were moved from the original city cemetery, many without their families' permission. In Orton Park, the former city cemetery, bodies were exhumed and moved to Forest Hill as early as 1859, and the identities of many of the people were lost in the process. The military section of the cemetery also contains multiple graves of orphans and unknown soldiers from the Civil War and World Wars, and a large boulder was placed at the site in 1891 to commemorate them. One of the most common ghostly encounters in the cemetery involves human-like shadows that are often seen moving silently among the gravestones, disappearing before anyone can approach them. Some speculate that these shadows belong to the spirits of those buried in unmarked graves, their identities lost in death as they wander aimlessly through the cemetery. Strange glowing orbs of light are also seen hovering over areas where unmarked graves are believed to exist. Paranormal investigators consider these orbs a classic sign of spiritual energy, potentially linked to the restless souls buried without markers. Others point to the disturbance of ancient Native American effigy mounds in the cemetery, 3 of which were destroyed during Forest Hill's development in the early 1900s. As early as 500 AD, early Native Americans used this site for burial purposes and constructed several large effigy mounds in the shapes of animals, including a panther and a goose. The Native Americans who built these mounds were part of a larger tradition of mound-building cultures known for constructing earthworks for various purposes, including burials, ceremonies, and territorial markers. Native American warriors are said to be buried in the goose-shaped mound on the southeast side of the cemetery, but unfortunately, the head of the goose was partially destroyed in the 1880s. As with many ancient burial sites, the Native American mounds at Forest Hill Cemetery have become entwined with ghost stories and tales of supernatural activity. Some visitors report feeling an overwhelming sense of energy or presence when near the mounds, but others say there is no paranormal activity at the mounds at all and that visitors could actually be experiencing something supernatural from the graves that surround them. The cemetery also has a ghost story about a spectral figure known as the Lady in White who's allegedly been seen walking among the older graves, including the Confederate Rest Civil War Memorial I talked about earlier. The mysterious woman has been described as appearing translucent or faded, and she wears a flowing white gown that resembles a Victorian-style hoop dress. Her demeanor is said to be mournful, as if she's searching for something or someone that was lost. One popular tale suggests she was a mother who lost her child and continues to search the cemetery for their grave. This theory aligns with reports of her being seen kneeling at various headstones or wandering near the graves in the children's section. Many associate the Lady in White with Alice Waterman, a dedicated caretaker of the Confederate Rest section of the cemetery where the graves of Confederate soldiers from the Civil War are buried. Alice Waterman passed away in 1897 and was buried in the Confederate Rest plot, and because of her devotion to the soldiers buried here, some speculate that her spirit may linger to continue her vigil. But I'd like to know your thoughts on this allegedly haunted cemetery and the two other locations in this video. Have you ever been to Forest Hill Cemetery in Madison or Hell's Playground in the Avon Bottoms wildlife area? If so, did you see the Dogman, a ghost, or have a strange experience at any of these locations? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel now to see future videos about haunted places in the Midwest and beyond. And if you want to engage with the channel more and get access to special perks only available to members of my channel, click the join button now and become an official member. The link for my YouTube membership can also be found in the video description below. Members receive special benefits including early access to my videos, photo status updates, and exclusive polls where you can vote for video ideas and haunted locations. And before you go, click on the video you see on the screen. I have multiple videos on haunted places in Wisconsin and Illinois, and I plan to make videos on haunted places in other states as well. And if you know about a haunted place you want to suggest for a future video, share the legends and location in the comments below.